you need to ask me afterwards,
Okay.
feel free.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you know, well, how you doing today?
Doing super.
Yeah.
An earlier present, we were Claudia and three other people in our meeting at 11, getting ready for a show, and we're going to do the documentary in December.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Went to college. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I had the honor of meeting Claudia. Well, I haven't met her in person, but her work. I found her work. I can't remember exactly, but she has been such a blessing to me. Not only with this, but just talking.
Yeah.
Amongst other things, education wise. So, and I just really appreciate her reaching her arms out because she didn't have to do that. And so
Claudia is good. She's awesome.
Yeah. So but like I said, I'm working on this dissertation for this educational leadership PhD degree. And originally back in 2019, I got my second degree in history. History. And the focus was on African American history, 1865 and after. And so that's where I really found about Rosenwald schools. And I'm ashamed to say that I grew up in a town that had a Rosenwald school on the campus of Prentice Normal and Industrial Institute. Which was started in 1907 by the Johnson family, Jonas Johnson and his wife, Bertha, who attended Tuskegee and worked sometime with Booker T. Washington before he passed away in 1915. So they started school there on a couple of acres, and it ran through 1989. We're trying to get it revived. The alumni committee there is trying to get it revived and get some things going back on the campus. And I'm also on a committee to try to bring some new ideas there to try to get it going again. So, but that Rosenwald building on campus was refurbished in 2011. It's an immaculate building. I don't know, I'll sing in a video of what they're trying to raise some money and the building. It's beautiful what they've done to it. They rent it out for parties, weddings. They have a small museum inside, but they did a great job with it. And so, like I said, I grew up seeing that building all the time, but we were never, as you know, in just like probably North Carolina, Mississippi, education was lacking, to say the least, in regard to our history. And so, and I know North Carolina had the most Rosenwald schools, if I remember correctly, in Mississippi.
That's correct.
In Mississippi, and Mississippi was second. So, but they don't do as good a job as North Carolina as keeping them alive, so to speak. A lot of them have disintegrated. No one knows where they stood at one point. So, but in that history degree, my capstone was Rosenwald schools. And at that time, just learning about it, I really didn't know or understand the ramifications of Blacks, African Americans, our people are really shouldering the load of financing those schools. If you don't dig deep into the history, you won't know or understand that. And that's not a bash on Mr. Rosenwald himself, but we have to uplift our people and make sure we know the real history of how we persevered and overcame through segregation, during that time. So I appreciate the scholarship that you guys have done, and I really wanted to talk to you and other people who have, you hit two pieces there. You were a student and you are an educator who knows a lot about it. So I wanted to talk to people like you to get your take on the things that I need to know. And these interview questions, I don't know if you had a chance to look over them, but
I looked at them, I thought about them, and I'm ready
Okay, all right, so, like I said, we'll just go through those and I'll make notes and I'll go back through this recording to make notes to get my coding and all that kind of stuff in conjunction with the other interviews I've done. But just tell me a little bit about your specific memories of your experience in your early years of education there in North Carolina, in a segregated school.
I'll begin by saying I went to segregated schools in North Carolina, Pender County to be specific, from grades 1 all the way through high school. I graduated from high school in 1965, went to all Black schools. So I went to, my first school I went to was elementary school. We had 4 teachers. First teacher had grades 1 and 2. Another one had 3 and 4. One had 5 and 6. Another one had 7th and 8th. And the 7th and 8th grade teacher was also the principal. Okay, it's a 4-room school. That was a Rosenwald School. I went there from grades 1 through 5. And I went there from grades 1 through 5 because after the 5th grade, all the 4-room, 3-rooms, 1-room schools were consolidated. And we got the very, very first school that was built specifically for us. It's called West Pender Elementary School. That was brick, and we had indoor bathrooms and running water. At Halfway Branch, we had we had heaters, and they were fueled by coal or AL. Okay, and we had outdoor bathrooms, outhouses is what we call. That was what we did. One of the things that I will share with you about that is that, first of all, they were most community schools and they were the focus of the communities. So the churches, the parents, the teachers all operated in corroboration and whatever was going on. Teachers were involved with the parents were involved with the school. We did things at the school. The other thing I would say, growing up there, it was the safest place we had. Safe in the sense that we went to school, we knew who we were, and we were told from the beginning, life's not fair. You need to know life is not gonna be fair. Here's who you are looked at. Here's the color, okay? That time they call us colored and Negro, okay? And you're gonna be this for all your life. This is, okay, you may be expected to know twice as much, to get the same job for half the pay. You have a couple of choices. Number 1, you can complain about it. Number 2, you can learn the system so you know how to operate and be able to deal with things that will bring change. We're not here to listen to your complaints. So that was set. That was the mindset. And so we got to know who we are. We could ask questions that you didn't get to ask questions at home, and you didn't get to ask questions at church because it wasn't your place. They tell you kid. So the only place that you could ask questions and get answers was at school. And we were given information and we were taught to be able to think.
Right. Yes, sir. Okay. And my mother graduated from segregated school in 1963. And as a child, I can remember growing up in the 70s. I can remember having all Black teachers and principals. I know that desegregation hadn't made it to that part of Mississippi yet. Really, not any of it to be exact, but you could pretty much say that it was a segregated school because 95% of the students were Black, even though the county was majority white. So they had their own private school over there up until probably the late 80s. So I definitely know about, of course, not more than you, but I definitely know the segregated part. And do you have any knowledge or memory of any financial issues your school may have faced?
Well, first of all, let me share with you is that from the perspective today, people look at financial issues because you're looking back from my perspective, you're looking at, well, you didn't get this and you didn't get that. So our focus was never on what we didn't get.
Right.
So throughout the conversation, you're going to hear a different perspective than what's perceived. And I'll talk about that in a different level of depth as we proceed. So when you go back and look at education in among the Blacks or African Americans or Negroes or colors, however you want to choose to use the name, and that's another conversation, we weren't expected to learn. Even when I was in school, all the way through, I think it was the late 50s that we were required to go to school in Pender County, for example. While there was lawfully and legally, you were required to go to school, it didn't apply to us because they didn't care if we went to school. Okay, they didn't care if we went. But that wasn't new to us. That wasn't new to African Americans. If you go back, education was important to them. And if you look at the history of public education in North Carolina, I can't tell you about Mississippi, public education in North Carolina was what did not come into existence until you got Blacks involved because education for North Carolina, the belief was if it was only for the elite. Remember, North Carolina, South Carolina's the people who the basis of that were people came from England.
Right.
And education was for the elite. Right. So they sent their kids to Europe or they brought tutors over here. Poor whites didn't have school. So when we started getting involved in school, it also had opportunities for whites to go to school. I tell folks as I was growing up in Pender County, we had Blacks, whites, and we had a family of the Indians. They were the Mahonis. They lived about a mile down the road from us. They could go to the Black schools, so they were not allowed to go to the white schools, but they wouldn't go to our schools. So the state provided a bus for them to go about an hour and a half every day to a different school that was just for them. So I wanted to give you that understanding, okay? So we were always involved in our education financially, so it wasn't new. So when you asking us, was it a struggle? If we hadn't been involved, we would have never gotten anything. And as we proceed to talk about Julius Rosenwald, I'm gonna give you a different perspective on that too, okay?
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers what you asked or that I haven't. Yeah, we were always involved. We got involved in things and we did things. Why? We didn't look at it as a burden. We looked at it, here's an opportunity. If we want something done, we're gonna have to take the initiative. That's why we were told from the beginning, you're Black. Okay? Yeah. Life's not fair. Right. We're looking at within our givens, that's what we deserve and what we're doing. You're looking at being fair and equity. Right. And we already knew that did not exist. And so we were not in Alice in Wonderland, we weren't blind. We realized what we needed to do and we were taking advantage of and moving forward in a progressive, positive method. And we were taught to do that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you talk a little bit about your teachers and parents, churches, all being involved and working together. What about like question number 3, did teachers or administrators have to perform duties other than teaching to ensure maintenance and operation of the school? If so, what specifically?
Before we do that, let me add another situation in reference to finances. Okay, that I think would document even more. We got hand-me-down books. We got hand-me-down books, everything we got hand-me-down. But one of the things that took place normally the first or the second day of school, at least during the first week, we got hand-me-down books. What every student did is you went home with your book and your assignment was to cover the book. You didn't cover it with paper. You covered your book with a cloth. So that means you need to sew whatever in our parents could. Why? You got a used book that was having that in it, whatever. And you may have a whole kind of list of things. But the issue is you valued it and you took care of it.
Yes.
At the end of the school year, if you paid a rent, you would pay a damage fee if it was in worse condition than when you got it. All that money was for us. So we were constantly taught we are investing. Your focus is to invest, do what you can, make certain invest, and be able to pass it off to whoever's coming behind you. So mindsets being created. So also you're invested in not only who you are now, but you're passing on as far as the future. So that's part of what we were doing. Teachers and administrators, they taught. Did they, we didn't, at our Highway branch, every classroom had, you could exit to outdoors. And I actually have a picture of of Halfway branch, and I got all that in the folder and stuff, and I'll send that to you so you can get to see, okay? The building is still there. Nobody's there in it as far as that's a whole nother discussion about the building. Yes. But the building is still there. We played in the yard. We shot marbles. We played softball, baseball, but we made our equipment. We didn't have equipment for those kind of things. So we played games, but it wasn't a problem. The teachers didn't have to be involved because there was a different level of expectations, and there was what's the term I want to use? We understood respect for order and authority. For example, I remember, I think as a fourth grader, I was accused of calling somebody a lie. We were not allowed to use the word lie, and we definitely didn't, okay? The principal, I still remember, he was the principal, now an eighth grader said that about me, okay? I didn't say that, but they never asked me if I said it. Mm-hmm. Principal came, took me out, he had me to stand up in the class, took my hand out, and he hit me in that with a paddle. Mm-hmm. I used to tell my students, I said, I learned a valuable lesson, and it didn't cost me getting shot or having my neck cut or anything. Right. What was that? The guy lied. Okay? I could say, well, I had no opportunity to say anything. No, he was older than I. Right. They were going to take his word over mine. Okay? They didn't, but what did I learn? I learned that he was a liar, and I needed to distance myself from him. Okay? So I could have gone to what was fair, or I could learn the lesson that I got from being around here. And that's what happened. So and that structure was in existence, okay? And we understood that. There was a respect for authority. Somebody older than you, they're gonna take their word over yours. Right. That was reality. We grew up in an environment, you already knew if you were dealing with situations, and I tell folks where I grew up, I could count the number of times on one hand that the police came out to where we lived. Okay, and I'd have fingers left over, but we couldn't call them because they were going to come. So you're learning what is the system, how it's going to operate, and what you need to do in order to affect it, and not just being frustrated. Well, that's not fair. Okay, we already told you this is not fair. We're teaching you what you need to do. So you can choose to argue about it, get upset about it. If your goal is to learn and be able to move, here's what you need to do. We're not going against a brick wall. Right. So the teachers taught, okay? We were involved. We disciplined out. We worked together. We played together. We worked cooperatively all the time in the classrooms, in the yard, And some of us spend a lot of time working on and off the farm and the blueberry farm. So we know how to get along with folk.
Right.
We were in school, we were together, we helped one another. We were not against one another.
Right.
So different mindset.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Especially totally from today.
And I tell folks, teachers taught. You can't teach without discipline. They knew how to teach discipline.
Right.
And I understood that to the point when I actually became a teacher in the state of California, where I was teaching, where we had 1,000, 7th and 8th graders, and I'm the first and the only African-American or Black person. I taught, I disciplined. I had respect that they got none of the teachers and administrators did, because I had been taught what to do.
Right. Right. I definitely understand that. My mother and aunt were teachers, so and they were cut from the same cloth, of course.
Teachers didn't play with you. They might
right.
try to be your friend. I'm here to teach you.
That's
I'm
right.
to be your friend. I can, but that's not my focus.
That's right.
And I'm going to hold you accountable. Here's the standard. Here's what I expect you to do. Here's what I expect you to act. When you make the wrong choice, here's going to be the consequences, and you're going to suffer it.
Right. Even outside of school.
There
even
you
outside
go.
of school, it was the same. It was the same.
That's correct. That's exactly right. That was standards.
Yeah, exactly right. So you talked some about your supplies, the books, hand-me-downs. Were most of that handed down from white schools?
No, most of it wasn't handed down from white schools. All of it was.
Right. Okay.
Not most, all.
Right.
We got everything hand-me-down. And because we got everything hand-me-down, one of the things I have learned since I've been back here, and Claudia and I've been doing presentations, I've been over, and I look back and I understand some things that I had never thought about, because I went through the system and I knew who we were. I knew what we were taught, but I began to understand and see where I did. People would say, "Oh, you're different." I was never different. I was different to them.
Right.
Didn't understand. And it's because their mindset is they always looked at what we didn't have. You got hand-me-downs this, you got hand-me-down, this is inferior and that's inferior. So their conclusion was, because we had inferior buildings, because we got hand-me-down books and buses, and they gave us stuff that they didn't want. They came to a conclusion that our education was inferior. Our education was superior to theirs. Why? Because we took nothing for granted. We already knew what we didn't have.
Right.
So we valued ours. When we went to school, it wasn't because we had to. They didn't want us. We knew going to school was a privilege.
Yeah.
And the teachers let us know that. You don't have to be here. No. I carry that same mentality when I teach. I told students, I said, if you think I'm excited because you sit here and occupied a chair, you have mistaken. I said, if you're not thinking, as far as I'm concerned, you are stinking. And if you're stinking, I figure you need to be buried. And I told them about the cemetery. That's where you need to go and plan. I said, but if you're in this class, there's some expectations. And I'm expecting you to think, use your brain. If you don't want to use your brain, you want me to tell you everything to do. I said, I want carte blanche. Right. What does that mean? That means you do exactly what I say. When I tell you to do it, you ask no questions. I said, because if you don't do that, if you don't think, that's what life's going to do to you. You're going to be told what to do, and nobody will ask you.
How did that come across? How did that go across to the?
It came across very blunt, very effective, because they know I wasn't playing. Because they tried some things with me. For example, well, I need to go to the bathroom. Okay. I trust you. How long? Okay. I'd watch them go, and they weren't going to the bathroom. You play with toys. You play with me.
All right.
I'd go out and I said, come right on back and sit down. Like I said, no problem, sit down. Move on, okay?
Wow.
No, if you ask me, you don't play with me.
Right.
You play with somebody else.
Right.
Well, you're not my daddy. You ought to be able to look at me and tell that. I didn't come to you. Okay?
Right. Wow.
I didn't send him, I didn't need to send him to the principal for him to do, but I knew my authority. I knew how to operate in it.
Right.
And I ain't gonna send you to somebody else to get you to do what you needed to do. Because when you cross this threshold, this threshold to this door, to this room, I got the key, okay? I'll tell you in a minute, I believe in democracy. I do not run a democratic classroom.
Right.
So don't get it twisted. I'm here to teach you.
Right.
And these are the requirements. When you cross this door, you are my authority. I'm here to prepare you to deal with life.
Right.
Okay?
That's
Now,
right.
what you don't do in somebody else is what you don't do at home, what you don't do with the principal, that's between you and them.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Absolutely.
I said it. We deal with clarity.
That's
Here
right.
are the boundaries here. We're not talking about, no, I'm not your dad. I'm trying to be, that's it. Your dad is at home. You know, I am. My role is.
That's right. That's right.
And I had walked through that being in an all-black school.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Okay? I got that from first grade all the way through high school. Then I went to undergrad school. I got that again.
Wow.
Okay? Then after that, I went to graduate school, where I tell folks I was the spook who sat by the door. I was the only black in my, okay? And when I look back, I remember when some of my classmates read my writing. Want to know, did you write this? I'm like, yeah. Now I understand. I remember having to go to a lecture in grad school. I'm the only black person who's going, and the guy who did the presentation, I think he must have been working on his doctoral degree, but he went to East St. Louis, Illinois. And his proposition was why Black people could not speak correct English. Well, my entire life was the antithesis to his thesis.
Right.
But I did not have the privilege of the opportunity in class to talk about that.
Right.
Because of the mindsets, okay?
Well, how did that affect you?
It was the first time I had ever been in school. It's the only class I've been in school in my entire life where I did not feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was in graduate school, okay? It's the first time I'd ever been in school in any place, and I felt invisible, not seen, as though I did not exist. So I know what it's like.
Right. It's total opposite of how you were raised and, like you said, your past experience.
Had I not had the background that I did and knew who I was, I don't know what I'd have done. As a matter of fact, my other professors, I had top grades in all of my other classes, and I never had a grade. I had never had a grade below a B in my life. Okay. Okay. I take that back. I had gotten a C in undergrad school, but he gave me a failing. I had never had a failing grade. I didn't know nothing about that. And some of the other professors thought I was going to quit grad school. It never crossed my mind. They told me, we want you to go talk to him. So I went to talk to him, to the professor. And I remember him saying, I could tell you his name, but I won't, because I still remember his name. He told me, Mr. Newkirk, you do not appear to be a dumb boy.
Mm.
This is in 1970.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
Which spoke volumes. I heard nothing else he said because I already knew he didn't see me.
Right.
There's nothing I could say. I went back and shared with the people who asked me what to do, and they told me, fine. Which causes me to know that they thought that's what would happen. They told me, we want you to submit a letter to us. It's this, that, the other. We will write it, put it in your academic record. We want you to take the course over with somebody else. Mm. And I have that documentation in my record to this day. Okay?
Wow.
Not hearsay, firsthand knowledge.
Yes.
Okay?
Wow. Mm. You said a total antithesis of what you had experienced your entire educational life before then. That's crazy.
There you go. That's correct.
That's crazy. Mm. The next question, I'm pretty sure, well, we already know the answer to that. Yes, you're familiar with your Rosenwald schools. And I'm looking back there on your wall there. Are those plans, Rosenwald School plans, or what are those?
No, these are, I'm in the library here in Pender County. So
okay.
Some other different plans.
Okay.
Yes, I am very familiar with Julius Rosenwald. And we had a picture of him in the school, but he was never our focus.
Right.
And the reason that he was not a focus and the person that we focused more on than he was Booker T. Washington, because we knew who Booker T. Washington was. We knew the relationship between Booker T. Washington and Rosenwald. Okay, so we didn't look at what Rosenwald did. We looked at who Booker T. Washington was and what his focus was. Why? Because it was about us. Rosenwald, we didn't think about Rosenwald as being about us. That in the same tenor, I'll get to that. Okay. As I already told you, we already knew the education that a lot of things were lawful.
Yes, sir.
Have you read the Narratives of the Life of Frederick Douglass?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. So you are probably familiar with the statement that he makes in chapter number 6, where he talks about a detailed conversation between one of his slave masters named Mr. Auld and Mr. Auld's wife, who was teaching him how to read. And the statement where he says his slave master told his wife, said, if you give the nigger an inch, he'll take an eel. All of that. He should know nothing but all of that.
Right.
We understood that concept. We also understood that during that time, and what's happened in the mindset that many people have had since then, is that the focus was, because we had experiences that many people looked at Blacks and they were looking at education, that it has to do with you start educating them, and people get involved with that because they think the debate between Booker T. Washington and not Frederick Douglass, I forget his name right now, it'll come to my mind.
Du Bois.
Who?
Du Bois.
There you go. There you go. The old academics versus industrialization. And when you really understand the conversation and the concept, it wasn't one or the other.
Right, absolutely.
Washington, and people call Washington Uncle Tom. And I don't have a problem with them calling Uncle Tom. What I have a problem with is they don't understand the concept or definition of an Uncle Tom.
Oh, absolutely. They get it all wrong.
And they got it, okay? And all of that you can see. Have you read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man?
I have not.
Okay.
Let me write that down. I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Okay. I submit to Ellison's Invisible Man, I submit to people is actually an autobiographical or as an history of what happened to Black folks in the United States from the 40s up until today.
Mhm.
And I say that because in Invisible Man, in the prologue, there's a place where the character is called the protagonist. He doesn't have a name. But anyway, his grandfather is dying, and grandfather calls all of his children into where he is. And his grandfather is being portrayed or described as what people think a Uncle Tom is, that he's passive, he's unassuming, and he just laughs and jokes and all of this kind of stuff. But he's nobody that creates any waves or does anything.
Yeah.
Well, grandfather's statement to he tells his children, he says, I have been a traitor in the enemy's camp. He said you need to teach it to your children. You need to overcome them with yes sirs and no sirs until they spit you out or vomit you out of their stomachs. Mm-hmm. His children think he's crazy. And so they reject it and put the kids out of the room. And what you find throughout that book, two things. One, you have a continual clown character or figure in various forms that goes throughout the entire book. And in the process, you will find that there becomes a disjunction between what the old people say and what the young people accept. Mm-hmm. What you find out is that everything that came from the old people are in reference to their history, they discard in reference to faith, in reference to education, anything. So they don't, okay? And what happens in the epilogue is that the protagonist who has rejected everything ends up in underground, I think it's a basement, where there's plenty of light, but he knows, he doesn't know who he is. He knows who he is not, but he has no connection or understanding of who he is. And when you look through it, it's because he has rejected everything that's related to his past. Okay, all right. Now, I tell folks a clown figure. I've taught the book because I've taught Black lit history and all that kind of stuff. I used to ask students, what do you know about a clown? And so they tell me, well, they'll make you laugh and make you funny. I says, you're telling me what he does. I didn't ask you about what he does. What do you know about it? And they ultimately come to the conclusion, you don't know anything about a clown because you don't know who he is. You don't think about it. You think about that he's designed to entertain you. And you don't think that he's anybody. He just somebody that you can laugh and have fun with, this and that, the other. So he can't be dangerous. I would submit to you, clown can kill you and you can't prevent him because you have no expectations. So there were principles that were taught. If you go back in history, Black people would tell you, you have to fix your face. Mm-hmm. They're telling you, you do not wear your feelings on your face. You go back to slavery. If you look like you were upset, you were targeted. If you look like you were thinking, you were targeted. So it wasn't that you didn't think, you learned how to listen. Right. And if you listen, people will tell you things that they didn't think you even knew or would pay attention because of the fact you're brainless. Right. Okay. So if you think I'm brainless and you tell me all your secrets in front of me, I know what to do and how to act. And I can get it done. So, and they will tell you, you don't just tell people what you want to, what they, you say, you need to get it done. And by the time they find out, you've already done and moved. Right. So grandfather was teaching them strategies to pass on. Yeah. And that's, you were talking about in reference to Rosenwald School. And that didn't happen because Black people stopped sharing or they stopped listening to the older people. And so older people stopped what? Stopped talking. That's what happened in 1898. People, okay, so the very thing that you find out that was in the life of Frederick Douglass is where you were intimidated to learn and to think is the very practice that's continued to this day. We make it about buildings. It was never the focus, it was on you being able to learn and think. And so we were taught the only thing you're going to possess is what you got. The building they can take from you.
It's true.
Okay. So the focus was, you don't look at what you don't have. You got to focus on whatever you get, the information, you got to make sure that it's yours. And that was emphasized in the schools that we attended, that Rosenwald helped provide another opportunity for us to have an opportunity to grow and expand. That's give him an inch, he'll take an eel. So you give us this, we're gonna use it.
Right.
Booker T. Washington's mindset. So you're gonna help us pay for this so we can learn to farm. Good, we'll use that, but we're gonna stretch it. And that mindset is not taught today because you don't have folks who understand that. What do they look at? They look at the buildings, they look at what you don't have. What do they not look at the individuals? So it's about stuff.
A little later on, do you think, what part do you think integration played in that?
Well, see, you use a term that I refuse to use.
Okay.
And I don't use integration as part of the things I end there, because integration by definition means that you and I sit down like we're doing right now and have a conversation. That's integration. And I tell folks that. Claudia and I came to that. When I first met Claudia, I just listened to her. And then after that, I began to understand it. And I told her, I said, I don't use the term integration. I said, because here's what it means. I said, I didn't experience that. That didn't happen in Pender County. It didn't happen where I was. People said, here's what's going to happen. Because if integration had occurred, our buildings wouldn't have been destroyed. Our history wouldn't have been destroyed. Okay? Why? Because there'd have been a conversation. You wouldn't have the school systems where you are in Pender County and every place else, that 80% of the teachers are Caucasians and women. Okay?
I've heard somebody else say.
There's documentation on all of that.
Right.
If there had been what happened in Pender County, and that Pender County Training School, well, C.F. Pope just got his name back within the last 3 years. Okay? We had some things preserved simply because there were some people who helped involved and got involved in it and kept pictures and stuff. Otherwise, everything would have been gone. Okay? I know what I know because my mother was involved. And she did some stuff to preserve some stuff and passed it down to me. And I'm doing the same thing. Okay? Now, so oftentimes I tell folks, and if you go back and look at the civil rights, when Johnson was president, what happened? They say, in order for you to continually getting federal money, you have to have, and they use the term integration. Okay? And I can surmise what I think their mindset was. Okay? I can't say for sure, but I can tell you how it was carried out. Is that the white school says, we're not we want the money. So in order to check the blocks off and to get to what we need to do, we're going to say, you're going to have to come to the school. See, I'm familiar with the process was used. I know that when I graduated in '65, that whole year, I know that they chose very specific students who were in my all-Black school. They talked to those parents and those children that they were going to send them to the white school the next year. And I assumed at that time that the kids understood all that process. Well, I found out later on, and when I say later on, I mean in 2000s, because when the preaching, I know, and I've known them all my life, and I've sat down and interviewed, and I have an interview, that they just went because they were told to do, they didn't know what was going on, okay? and they endured hell. But they chose students who were academically strong. They had some dark black ones, and then they had some light bright, but not quite white ones. But they were looking at their academics, they looked at the color of their skin, and they looked at their dispositions to choose students who were not going to be disruptive, who they thought could endure, okay? And not say anything and cause a ruckus. That's not segregation. That's not integration, okay? That's what happened. My mother was one of the first teachers that they put. And one of the documentaries that Claudia did, it's called Carry Me, An American Story. My mother talks about that on that documentary, okay? She put, when they asked her where you wanted to go, she didn't put a white school on there. Just before school started, a week or so before school started, they had a meeting. They told her we are sending you. She had no choice in that. She went home and she called a person she knew was involved in the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, and told them, whatever you plan to do, I want you to do it this weekend. Because they're sending me to one of your schools on Monday, and I do not want to go. Okay? Reality.
Right.
They told her, we asked for you. There won't be any problems. That's not integration.
Right.
Okay? Folks don't know those stories. They know a perspective. They know what's publicized, what's shown. Okay?
Point well taken. I'm going to have to remember that. But like I said, I've heard somebody else, I think it was Joe Madison, I was listening to his show, and he said the same thing. Integration, what he was saying, means a sharing of power and resources.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So,
definition. That's
right.
any definition you can go to any dictionary, that's what you're going to find. And if you put the definition, that's not what happened.
Absolutely right.
I don't know in a situation where that happened. I was involved in a documentary with this year that we worked on for several years. And I'm the only person of color who was on the committee, and it was dealing with some things. And I listened and listened and make some suggestions. It was like, it went. So finally I had to think about, first of all, is this something I want to do? Am I willing to go through this? And after I answered those questions, decided, yeah. Because my mindset is, if nobody tells them, they can still, right? And so I started saying, that sounds good. That's not my perspective. That's your perspective. What I'm understanding that you share with me is you want to know our perspective. Well, that's not my perspective. And so I had to keep saying that. I kept saying that because they have always seen things from, well, this is, okay, I'm the standard. No, you're not.
Right.
You don't have a brain. Yes, I do. I think. And so that's part of what's happening. That's why I'm willing to talk to you, because are you in position to be able to see some things and to share some things and use it how it is going to work for you. Okay? You know what you need to write and you know what you need to know. Okay?
And do you not believe that African Americans get enough credit for building and maintaining education environments? I think I know your answer, but
well, let me. I thought about that, and I decided to write that out. Please explain. What I said, I believe that there has been, as I previously shared, that believing that schools were integrated and that we live in a colorblind society is a disgrace, a disservice, and a definite denial that we exist or that we are visible. We've been called colored, Negro, Black, and now African Americans. We have not been asked or involved in these discussions. So our focus of development of educational institutions, from my perspective, is linked to our identity, who we are. Mm-hmm. If we are still a minority who are not equal, substandard, inferior, even in our thinking, with the exception of when it comes to athletics, our facilities and institutions are underfunded, it's easy to come to the conclusion that there has been a deliberate effort to minimize, marginalize, and or undervalue the African Americans community successful development of education institutions. When we are valued as people, who we are, then what we have done and what we do will also be valued.
Great answer, great answer. In my perspective, I think it starts with us and the work that you all do, and many people across this country. You know, I believe that it starts with us, like you said.
Oh, yes.
Knowing who we are and the people that came before us, generations came before us, and what they had to endure and how they overcame. You know, we don't do enough of telling of that in our own community. It seems
well,
like
we are doing it. This is all a process. Other people can't do it.
That's right.
They didn't know it, okay? And because when you look at the background of what's happening, and I can talk to you about 1898 and other things, people who did know could not share at times past because their very life story was involved. Mm-hmm. Look at things, so, well, you can just do, no, you couldn't just do stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay? There was a great shift between what happens in 1960 and what happens in the late 70s, okay? I was just sharing with someone recently, most people do not realize that when I graduated from high school, that you didn't have to have a high school diploma to go into the military. The Army could draft you. Mm-hmm. Okay, the draft was in existence, okay? And I have classmates who were drafted and went to Vietnam and they died because they were sent straight to where? The front yards. They were in the infantry. Right. And Vietnam was the first war that we were involved in that was, quote, different. Different how? We did not know who the enemy was, what they looked like. You study warfare in the United States, outside of the United States. You always knew who the enemy was. All that changed, okay? So there's a lot of changes, a lot of shifts that took place that many people who are in education, who are teaching, have no clue about. So they can't teach that they don't know, okay? And a lot of folks who do know won't share. And some of them won't share because they're like, nobody's gonna listen. I'm not wasting my time, because it requires a sacrifice. It requires some things, okay? And it requires a whole lots of stuff, okay? Some people, like I said, were killed because you tell it to the wrong person, you can be killed, okay? Recently, well, I'll say within the last, I'll just say recently, and I'll leave it like that. We had the privilege of doing a presentation to a school in North Carolina. I was involved in, there was 3 of us. I was the only male. There was Claudia, and there's another lady who was Black. And we were going to part of North Carolina that there's not a lot of us. The school, when we, first of all, before we went, I had somebody who knows me real well, shared some things to me about where we were going that provoked me to do a different level of discussion and a different level of information prior to my going, because I needed to know some other things. I found out that at that school, we were going like in September or October, and that's previous school year before the school ended, that a white student had chased a Black student with a noose, and it had not been dealt with. Okay, we are talking in the late 2000s. Okay, so I'm told this, and I don't share this with either, because I'm like, okay, Lord, that's going on where I'm going, and we're talking about this. So I did the research on the school to find out all the demographics. I want to know about everything I could find out about every faculty member, where they went to college, so I could know what their mindset was. And I did. And most of them had a picture. There was one person I knew who had gone to an HBCU. So I knew at least somebody has a different mind. I didn't know who the person was. And we did, I think, about 4 or 5 presentations. We were going to do a presentation that Sunday evening to the community that was held at an all-Black church. And we went there, and that conversation, we had people from the board there, we had people from the community, but after we did the presentation, they started asking questions about challenges that was going on between the school board and the community. Found out that the school board was meeting in the Rosenwald School, but the community had not had input into none of that. Also found out that the school board had asked for input from the community about several issues, and the community had given input, but nothing they had said had been received and acted on. So this is Sunday when we get there. So I got this in addition to the information that I shared with you about what had happened. And then I had some people afterwards to make certain, and they talked to me to make certain I knew. And they told me about some of the teachers and told me who would pay attention to. All this I got before the next day we were going to do all the presentations. And we did presentations to 3 different sets of classes who brought to the, I call it the gymatorium. I don't think I've seen a high school that of that magnitude anywhere in my life before, as far as buildings and accommodations. Okay, and I've been involved in education in Maryland, in Illinois, in California, and North Carolina. Okay, I have not seen a school who had that kind of provisions, building wise and material wise, any place before or after. Okay.
I like Texas.
Okay. So we talking about buildings. Okay. I hadn't seen it. No place. I mean, they had gyms, they had auditoriums, they just had stuff. Lots of it.
Yeah.
And so we did presentations, and our last presentation was to the faculty, all of the staff. And they asked questions, but we didn't know. How are you going to do it? I remember sharing with them. I said, I says, let me give you an example. So I talked about being in a minority, being the first and only in another school. I said, here's what, I said, I took the newspaper. I got involved in the culture and what the people were. I said, you got to reach out and do some work. You're gonna have to study. You're gonna have to do some reading. You're gonna have to do some things different. You can't assume. Okay, where I was, their mindset where I was about Blacks was based on television or something else. They ain't talk to nobody. They didn't have to interact with anybody. Where they could be challenged. Everywhere they went, they were in charge. So you're not gonna learn when you're in charge because you control the conversation. So you gotta be vulnerable. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. You did. Wow.
You can laugh. You can tell me, no, and ask me again. I'll tell you some more.
So how did that go over? I mean, you mentioned there was one HBCU graduate. Sometimes, you know, if you're the only person in a certain environment, you may feel overwhelmed. You know, being mentioned, I was in the military for 23 years, so I've been in certain situations. You know, military is probably one of these most racist institutions. There is.
No, what branch of the military were you in?
The Air Force.
What were you?
Sir.
What were you? What was your rank?
I retired as an EA, as a senior master sergeant, but I was a personnel guy at the end of my career.
I understand all of that. I was in the United States Air Force.
Okay.
Officer.
Oh.
United States Air Force. So I'm familiar with all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know,
okay.
So you
and
know,
I can tell you some stories.
Yes, particularly as a Black officer,
I was stationed. You've heard of the SR-71?
Yes, sir. Blackbird.
That's where I was stationed. And I was Black officer number 7 or 8. We had combat support group. We had the 9th wing. We had the 456th wing, and we had the 14th Air Division and the 666 Radar Squad, all on the same base. We had 9th. We had SR-71. We had T-38s, B-52s, KC-135s. We had a huge population. And it was during the time when if you were a female and you were in the military, that means that you were married. And if you got pregnant, you had to request an opportunity to stay, and 9 times out of 10, they would dismiss you. Okay? So give you some background. I can tell you some stuff, okay?
We're going to talk about that.
And I was in base admin, and then I was in civil engineering squadron. So, and I worked with everybody, including the OSI.
Right.
During the time when also they started using dogs in the barracks and all of that stuff. So I'm familiar with all that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. And I think
knowing that the Air Force was never designed for Blacks.
Absolutely. Particularly the Air Force, you're exactly right.
I'm specifically talking about it.
That's right. That's right. There was no infantry in the Air Force. And
when I came to Beale, they knew all about my educational background, and they wanted me to go to the Air Force Academy. I went and was interviewed several times. I remember Colonel asking me what I thought my greatest asset was, and I told him about my being exposed to education and variety and all those kind of things. And he told me, he says, I hear that. He said, but I don't think that's your greatest asset. I think your greatest asset is you're Black. He has no idea that I took that as an insult. because what it communicated to me was what I thought already. They weren't interested in my brain. They were interested in saying, we got one, so we represented.
Right.
Okay? And he didn't even know that I had enough understanding to understand what he was talking about. And I let him remain ignorant.
Right.
I did not take the assignment because I had to say so.
And quite sure, let's see, I retired in 2014, same issues, nothing changed. Nothing.
So when I got out, I had to, back in the time when I got out, I had to request to get out, and they had to accept it as an officer. And they wanted to know why I was getting out. Had somebody done anything to me? Because I had a perfect record. I had high marks, and they knew I could go places. I just said, you just tell them. I said, I just want to get out. That's all I'm saying.
That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. And I think I mentioned to you, I had a young lady work for me whose last name was Newkirk. She was from North Carolina. I can't remember what town, but Canessa was the first name. This was in 1996, 1996 to 2000. But I lost track of her when I left, so I don't know.
Where were you at that time?
I was at Keesler in Biloxi, Mississippi.
I know where Keesler is. I went to Keesler in 70. I was in Keesler in 70, December 70, and from May to July of 72.
Okay.
I enjoyed that base. I had some friends there.
Yeah,
that I met there. We did a lot.
Right. Yeah, it's totally.
And I think at the admin office school, I think I was I was a minority even there.
Right. When I was there, I was an instructor for the enlisted side, but they had what they call the BPOC, basic officer course. I don't know if they have it or not, but so yeah, these was fun times. But and I think you mentioned minimizing, marginalizing the generations of, before you and what you went through in regards to African American, our educational values and systems that we had. Do you think that's still a problem today?
No, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's a result of, actually, I go back to, gosh, I can see his face, can't think of the name, the guy who they had the knee on. Who was killed with the knee.
George Floyd?
Yep, him. As a result of all that being captured on camera and publicized, and so much, I think I tell folks it wasn't new, but it was visible and shown. And I was at the doctor, I don't know if it was last year or this year, but a nurse, no, she wasn't a nurse. She was a doctor's nurse. This black lady came and talked to me, and she helped me. She said, I have two kids. She says, one went to this school and the other one went to that. One was the latter went to the HBCU. And that statement, if I had known then what I know now, the first one would have gone. So people they're just beginning to understand that because it's Black, it's not inferior. Because they've been told, they've been, those are the best. They didn't know anything about our schools. Right. Black kids didn't know about our schools. Right. And didn't know because they're in schools that nobody talked about. And when we talk about even, I'm an A&T alumna, and we have chapter meetings of dealing with, and we try to do things. It's difficult to get information into the public school system with the counselor because of the fact they're publicized, but okay, so kids don't know. And you don't have Black teachers in there, or people who are in the system who can share before. So all of that's changing. So I said, look at people, I said, I'm excited. Why? First of all, I'm talking to you. Okay, I'm talking to you. So I'm like, what? We are doing what? The same thing that we were taught to do. You network and you help. One teach one, one each one. That's oh yeah, that's happening. I deal with Claudia. Claudia used to get on my last nerves, and she knew I don't have no problem. I just listened to her. I was going to cut her loose like you drop a hot potato. But I had some relationships, a lot. I prayed, and I'm constantly knowing, okay, is this a relationship I need to maintain? Right. Okay, and I'm constantly knowing that people, I had a pastor who told me, people do what they do because that's all they know. So I had to think about, how do I learn to communicate to this person in a way that they can understand and communicate the message? I tell folks, I says, integration didn't happen, but that's where it needs to happen. Yeah. I said, if we're going to be successful in order to move forward, we're going to have a conversation where I respect you and you respect me, because I can tell you some things that you don't know. And you can tell me some things that I don't know. And we can work. This is not me against you. If we are going to make it, if our kids are going to make it, we need to know how to talk together and live together. See, growing up, we knew we had to do as a Black person, we knew how white folks thought. To know. We knew how they would react to us and what we needed to do. They never thought about us. Okay? We always thought about them. I have a daughter, she'll be 37 in a week, okay? She used to tell folks, my mama and I are white, my dad's Black. She acted like I moved. No, you're not. You can't think that way. You need to know who you are so you know how. She understands that now. So my point is that a lot of times in school, they were taught, this is 2020. You don't need to think like that. The thinking process has not changed. Why? Because nobody has challenged it. Okay? You're writing, you're doing some things in reference to thinking, you're going to involve it. But what Claudia and our focus is to be able to have conversations in reference to education, that we can infiltrate the educational system so you can see a different perspective. Okay?
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that A&T had the largest enrollment.
I'm an agate, we have. Right. But if you look at the history of A&T, okay? A&T has always been about change. When I was at A&T, when I graduated, they didn't have the respect or reverence that it does now, because, okay, the sit-in movement started for students out of A&T, okay? When I was there, they wanted to shut A&T down or swallow us up. They wanted to, do you know what changed that? We had been taught who we were. And the alumnus says, over our dead bodies. And it wasn't until I came back here that I found out that all HBCU alumni were not as involved in their schools as ours. I just assumed that they were. So a lot of them were experiencing in the early 2000s the stuff that we experienced in reference to trying to shut programs and stuff down back in the 60s and 70s. Okay? I was like,
Yeah, we were there in July. My cousin, his daughter runs track. He was at the AAU finals. So we made our first trip to North Carolina, and it was actually on the campus of A&T. And we got a chance to go by the Woolworth Civil Rights Museum, just try to do some things that, because that's me, I'm a history person. And of course, our history is my primary value and interest. So we really loved it there. And we grew up in Mississippi. HBCUs was the thing, you know, Jackson State, Alcorn, Mississippi Valley, even Hines Community College is HBCU. So that was all we knew. We didn't dare go to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. That was for white folks. You know, even though they had a Black population, you know, James, after James Meredith integrated. You know,
I know about that too.
But our family and our community, that wasn't even on our radar. It was always Jackson State and Alcorn, you know, and so, but the generation after us, you know, some of them still go to those schools, but a lot of them matriculate out to USM, Southern Miss. My nephew went to Mississippi State. My niece went to USM, even though their parents went to HBCUs. It's just, they grew up in a all-white school. So
there you go. So they who did they find out about?
Right.
So my daughter, our senior year, she told me, she said, "You promised me you're gonna take me to A&T's homecoming." I was living in California. I told her, "I'm not taking you, but I'll sing you." She went to A&T's homecoming. She came back to California. She says, "I'm going back east." She got to see a different, okay. Before, have you read the book called The Tie That Binds by Ladner?
That Dorothy Ladner?
The Ties That Bind by Joyce.
Okay. No,
I'll send it to you. I'll send all this information to you.
Okay.
I have several articles and I'm gonna send them to you. You can look at them. I put a whole folder of stuff to give to you.
Okay.
So I'll send it to you. If it will help you, use it. Some of them even has lots of other references that you can choose to use. My focus is to give you as much information as I can give you. You know what you need to use for now and what you need to have for later.
I think the Ladners grew up, we grew up not far from them, Joyce and I think Dorothy. So, but I know the book, but I have not read it. So
it's let me it tells you she's talking about timeless values for African American families. She talks about stuff that was taught in families, and you get it's the stuff that you asked me about in reference to Rose is what was taught, and that's in the documented. That's why I'm sharing that with you.
Yes, sir. Good. Yes.
A lot of people don't know about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think over the past 2 years, I think my wife like, "You getting too many books here." I think I got books stacked up over everywhere. I try to read them all, and just but sometimes run out of time, and this has kept me busy. But
I'm not gonna tell you to read them all. I'll tell you to scan, find out what that, and you can go back and read it later on.
Yes.
Okay. You can go look at the table of contents. Find out, what do I need in reference to this? She has things. Just keeping the promise talks about Black barriers. She talks about first principles. She talked about personal power. We didn't raise ourselves alone. We're making the future together. Power community. All of that's what you got in our schools.
Yes.
All Black schools. Those are principles.
Yes.
And the documentary, Claudia sent you a link to the documentary on lessons learned from Rosenwald schools.
Yes, I watched it.
Okay, that's all of that's in here too.
Okay.
Those principles, that's what you hear me talking about in that. And I'm trying to give you something that's documented that you have. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I know you're going. I got this, but I got that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I love this kind of conversation. I love to learn from, you know.
And anything I can do, you got my phone number, you know how to get a hold of me. Anything I do to help you, I'll do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
If you get to the point you even need me to read and edit, I'll do that.
Okay. Thank
Okay?
you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
My
Thank you.
focus is to input every opportunity I get, and I'm nitpicky about who I give. So I'm talking to you. I'm good.
Well, you have to be. I mean, you have to be. I'm that way too. I'm that way too. Yeah.
I'm excited because I know who you are. And I know that you have been chosen to do stuff and you're gonna pass it on. So I just feel privileged. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely be in touch just to say hello, because that's what I try to do with people that I meet that touch me.
When are you projecting to March?
That will be I should be doing my defense probably in February. So, and you know, probably be around April time period.
Graduation where?
It's normally in Southern California, around Long Beach area.
Oh, I know where all that is. Okay, I'll think about that.
I have my list. I have my running list of people I'm going to invite. You know, and if people can't make it, I totally understand. But everybody who I talk to, interview, help me in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I got a running list. I think I got about 50 names on there. But
no, I think if I go to California, and if I go to Long Beach and don't go to Northern California, I'll never live it down. I'm a Northern California.
Okay. You'll be in hot water. You definitely will.
You went where?
You come up here? Yeah, we did.
And have you been to Long Beach area before?
Yes, sir. When I finished my master's degree, and we were actually in Malibu a couple of months ago, and when we go there, we try to hit from South Los Angeles all the way up through, ride the 101 basically. You know, Pacific Coast Highway. Try to. My wife loves that.
Okay. So. I got you. Have you ever eaten on the Queen Mary? In
No, I've heard good things about it, but I haven't.
I think we ate there. We were at a convention. Educators convention. I want to say it was in 76 or 77, in 78. And our waiter was from England. That's the best waiter I think I have ever had. We still talk, we still talk about it.
Wow.
It was off the chain.
Wow. Got to keep that in mind.
All right.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
I'm just glad I could help.
Yes, sir. And I'll be in touch, and thank you for these sources here. I'm definitely going to check them out. I
must email you some stuff as soon as I get off.
Okay.
I have a folder that's got your name in it that because I was reading, put it, and so I'll send it to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. All right.